Friday, October 24th, I understand, was the end of a 5 year cycle. The treaty, 1944 water sharing treaty with the U.S. and Mexico, as far as how to share water from the Rio Grande, also affects water in the Colorado River, I understand. We give them this, they give us that, and the back and forth. So it's the end of another 5 year cycle for the water sharing treaty. And there's a deficit as far as the amount of water Mexico was supposed to hand over to the U.S. And of course, we got this debt, increasing debt. Sonny Hinojosa joins us again. He's vice chairman of the Region M Water Planning Group. And before we get too far into the weeds, real quick, like the 1 minute explanation for working people. What is this Region M Water Planning Group that you and Jim Darling, other folks, other leaders are part of, and how might it affect water policy in Texas? What is it, Sonny?
It was a group that was developed by the Texas Water Development Board about 28 years ago as a result of one of the legislative sessions, Senate Bill 1 at that time. And this group studies the water needs of all aspects, whether it be agriculture, municipal, domestic, industrial, steam electric, environmental. And we have representatives on this board from all these types of water use. And we come up with the demands needed for each category. And every 5 years, we update that plan. And we just terminated that plan for this 5 year cycle, and we submitted it to the Texas Water Development Board a couple of weeks ago. So what we do, we update mainly the population and the water needs for each category of type of use.
And for you mentioned industry, so in that new report that you mentioned, uh, is there a growing demand from industry? Because we keep hearing that these data centers and chip manufacturers and all these other industry coming fast to Texas, they're very thirsty, probably thirstier than sugarcane. They'll need a lot of water if we're supposed to host these things. So was there anywhere in the
Now,
report?
what's interesting is the water that's going to be needed is, or the development that occurs by industry is normally on, of course, acreage that used to be planted or farmed. So that water, you see a shift increase in the needs of municipal, domestic, industrial,
Mhm.
but proportionately, you see a decrease in the amount of water needed for agriculture. So that kind of corrects itself. The only category that is always short on water is agriculture or irrigation. So, and those needs, they're difficult to meet um, if we don't get sufficient rainfall
Yeah.
and inflows into the Amistad Falcon Reservoir system.
Sonny and Hosa, vice chair of the Region M Water Planning Group, and yeah, the study. What was it, like 2 years ago, right? Texas A&M study, Sonny, $1 billion
Oh,
in losses in
the
agriculture as a
impact,
result,
yes, sir.
right,
That's
of not having
correct.
water. And
An annual impact.
well, it doesn't seem like things are going to get any better. Mexico finished another 5 year cycle with a deficit, which of course compound that on top of the debt. So, what numbers can you share with us to give
Yeah,
us perspective?
that when Mexico defaults on a 5 year cycle, whatever amount or volume of water that's a deficit becomes a debt that must be paid the next 5 year cycle. So we're looking at just under 900,000 acre feet that this cycle closed, about 876,000 acre feet, and that deficit became a debt. So not only does Mexico have to deliver the minimum volume of 350,000 acre feet per year, they're going to have to start chipping away at this debt and not wait for some kind of storm to pay this off to the United States. So hopefully Mexico will come up with a plan, and our State Department will put pressure on Mexico to give up some of the water that they have stored, because they have stored quite a bit of water. They just about doubled the volume of water they have stored in those six tributaries.
Yeah.
They're up to a little over 1.4 million acre feet, and Mexico could deliver some of that water to the United States if some pressure is put on them.
Well, there was pressure put on them several months back, And
Yes,
they cried
absolutely.
uncle, and that's why I had been asking several folks in ag and other folks who are knowledgeable in water issues, is this the time again to go back to that same well? Tell Mr. President, President Trump, hey, Mr. President, how about you, tighten the screws again and see if they can release the water now before they waste it when they could deliver it now and get the numbers closer. Is there any movement on that to follow up on that?
You know that Mexico allocates their water, and in Mexico, the federal government governs the water, and they allocate it to their states every October. So we're anxious to hear whether they took any water out or allocated any water to the United States, as part of their plan for next year. Because once they set that plan of how much water each state gets, it makes it difficult to go back in and try to squeeze water out of one of the states. It's always best to get it straight from the federal government. But
And also,
yes, I think there was supposed to have been a meeting, with our State Department, IBWC in Mexico last week. We haven't heard the results of those meetings. But yes, back in April 29th, earlier this year, our State Department met with Mexico, and Mexico came up with this plan that they would deliver between 324,000 to 420,000 acre feet by October. And they did deliver by reservoir transfers at Amistad, and they also allocated part of their two-thirds flow into the Rio Grande to the United States. So we hope that continues, or maybe even give us a higher percentage of their flows. So something needs to give. And then I'm sure you've also heard about the USMCA negotiations. Every 6 years it comes up for discussion, and we're trying to put something into the USMCA that 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 forces Mexico to release some of this water to the United States.
even if Sunny Hinojosa, Vice Chair, Region M Water Planning Group, again, Mexico ended another 5 year cycle in a deficit and a debt year after year after year. They owe slightly over two, by my calculations, it's slightly over 2.5 years worth of water that should have been delivered to the U.S. And they got to find a way to get that into our reservoir. What's the status right now, Sonny? Like, what is the Falcon Amistad
Well,
U.S. ownership?
yeah, the U.S. ownership has been creeping up a little bit by those transfers and Mexico allocating a portion of their water to the United States. So the U.S. is at 910,600 acre feet, which is 26.97%. We're doing better now than we have been the last couple of years, but it still doesn't leave sufficient water for agriculture. Ag needs 1 million acre feet a year on a normal rainfall year, and the National Weather Service has forecast a development of a weak La Nina system, which interprets to a warmer than normal and drier than normal for us. So our needs for next year, because right now we're in vegetable season, and whoever had water planted. So
Mm.
right now our next growing season is next spring for our row crops, and that's the volume of water we're looking at. Ag is only left with about 530,000 acre feet after you subtract the reserves from our total volume. So that's only 53% of the water that we need for next year. So we're short. So we're finishing a third year of another shortage for agriculture, and we're staring at a fourth year of not having sufficient water for all our crops.
Let me ask you something that popped up the other day in a conversation. Somebody mentioned this. And I said, you know what? I'm going to ask Sonny. Maybe he knows. The Falcon Dam. I don't know where it is specifically, Falcon versus Amistad, right? It, someone told me that Falcon can only hold once they reach 50% of capacity. That's it. Is that true, or can they go even higher than that? Do you know?
I have not heard a specific number, but Amistad is the one that has some structural integrity problems, and there is a plan to go in and repair
Amistad.
that
Okay.
dam.
Okay.
This would be the time to do it when there's not much water behind it, but I think the funds were lacking. But yes, there is a plan of what Mexico and the United States are going to do to fortify that dam, but
Okay.
I have not been told that it cannot, be filled.
Okay. That's Amistad, not Falcon. The
That's
one that
correct.
needs to be
Amistad.
see
Yes.
some I mean, stuff which is at what over like Eagle Pass or something like that, way
Del
west,
Rio.
Del
Yes, sir.
Rio area. Okay.
Yeah.
Does Going back to what you said, it'd be nice if we can get the USMCA and the water issue all wrapped up into one, maybe put a trigger or two in there. But if those triggers, or if they trip those wires, can Mexico City force some of these water entities to actually release the water? I recall in a couple of conversations prior to this, either with you or somebody else, maybe it was Jim Darling. Mexico, like the regional directors in northern Mexico, they're the ones who control the faucet, the spigot. Mexico
Yeah.
City can't force these people unless they send in the army or something like that.
And that's why we want to incorporate something into USMCA where we could restrict the trade with Mexico.
Hmm.
We need some leverage outside of the water world. Uh, if we use leverage with water, it had to be the Colorado versus the Rio Grande. We never failed to deliver to Mexico what they're entitled to on the Colorado, but on the Rio Grande, Mexico does not reciprocate. So we're hoping to work something into the USMCA so as whether if Mexico is not complying with the terms of the treaty, then some trigger points set up to where we do not receive the produce that Mexico is growing with water that's rightfully supposed to flow into the Rio Grande. So that's the angle that we're hoping to accomplish is put some teeth into the 44 treaty through the USMCA. Restrict the trade. We need to take the incentive away from Mexico to continue expanding their irrigated agriculture with water that should rightfully flow into the Rio Grande for our benefit.
We're at 27%. We need to be at what,
We need
40
to be at about 45% for us to have sufficient water
for
for 1 year.
especially for ag to have it
Absolutely for agriculture.
come next spring. Yeah, it's going to be. Yeah, that's not going to happen between here and
No,
there.
sir.
All right. Well, Sonny, thanks again for your time. Let's see what comes of all these conversations on putting USMCA and the water treaty into one big diplomatic burrito. See if they can get it done.
Yes, sir.
Anything else before I let you go that you were hearing related to water you need to share with us? It could be
No, sir.
on
Uh,
like the legislature passes like $20 billion. I think it's Prop 4, if I remember. Uh,
yes, it is,
yeah.
and there's not a whole lot of water for. I mean, money for
Mhm.
agriculture. That's a sad part about uh, that Senate bill that passed this last session. Is there's only 2 million acre feet. I mean, $2 million worth of money available for ag, and that's not anything. I mean, that's a drop in the bucket. We have projects in our region and plan that total over $550 million.
Yeah.
And when you look at 2 million coming from the state, it doesn't accomplish much. Most of the money is going for domestic and municipal needs, and finding new water, uh, and replacement of aging infrastructure. But once again, the focus is potable water, domestic water.
Wow. Only 2 million for ag. It's like
Yes,
it's like a cold splash of water thrown into ag's face. That's what it is. Somebody might be saying 2 million, 2 million is 2 million. No, hundreds of hundreds of millions and billions of dollars is what's needed
we
in order
need
to.
over $550 million. That's
Yeah.
what we need.
Thank you so much, Sonny. Appreciate you. Vice Chair of the Region M Water Planning Group, Sonny Hinojosa.